what if, you know, all of the buses or cars in your fleet are electric and they're charging at night? Some asshole drives by and turns them all off. You're gonna have a bad day the next morning. What do you do? So you don't even get root. Like, dude, that's not the point. I did the thing. I turned off your car. Like that's the objective here, right? So you could disable a whole fleet of electric vehicles and bring logistics for a whole company to a stop, cause tons of damages, right?
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Kill Chain podcast, where we talk about everything vehicle cybersecurity related. Really excited about today's guest. He has spent his career on one of the most important front lines of cybersecurity, and that is the modern automobile. So, Kamel Ghali is an automotive cybersecurity researcher, penetration tester, and educator whose work spans everything from hands-on vehicle exploitation to helping manufacturers build more secure vehicles. What's really, really exciting, and this is perfectly timed with DEF CON coming up here in a couple of weeks, he's also the lead ambassador for the Car Hacking Village, in Asia, and the founder of the Japanese chapter of the Automotive Security Research Group. And he is a very familiar face at DEF CON, Black Hat, Hack in the Box, and RSA. So with that, Kamel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Terry, for the kind introduction. It's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are probably really, really busy right now with everything with DEF CON coming up.
Yeah, lots of preparations, a lot of stuff for the village, a lot of things for my car hacking training that I'm giving after the DEF CON conference. So a lot of preparations around there, just making sure all the labs work properly, all of
Hmm.
the student environments are set up. Packing my suitcases on the floor over there in my office. You know, a lot of last minute adjustments, making sure I don't forget anything important as I before I fly across the world. But yeah, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, you're in Tokyo, so if you forget something, it's going to be kind of hard to get it shipped to you or to pick it back up.
That's right. Yeah, it's far away from home.
Nice. So you just mentioned that you are teaching a course. So is that at DEF CON or is that just something separate after?
Yes, that is at DEF CON. So you're probably familiar. A lot of cybersecurity conferences and events, they'll have like a conference where they have
Uh-huh.
presentations, talks, workshops, sponsor booths, etc., and then cybersecurity training as well. So the cybersecurity training is usually more hands-on. It's usually kind of a separate ticket. You have to pay separately for the training and
Hmm.
for the conference, where you'll have an instructor who teaches you, an intensive 2-day class about something, right? A lot of conferences will have the training days before the conference.
Hmm.
DEF CON, I think, is a bit rare in that they do the conference first and then they have the training afterwards. So I think it's just a byproduct of how cramped Hacker Summer Camp is. That whole kind of week
Hmm.
or so of cybersecurity activities in Las Vegas with Black Hat and B Sides and and DEF CON. But yeah, the training at DEF CON, it's the official DEF CON training. I'll be delivering a car hacking masterclass. So I'm very excited for it. Going to be looking at a lot of different parts of the automotive, security ecosystem. So vehicles themselves, connected infrastructure like EV chargers, so on and so forth.
Nice. So do you actually bring like ECUs in and set them up for, training Zag? Like what does the course look like curriculum wise? And like who are you trying to attract? Is it the hackers? Is it the professional cybersecurity engineers that work at the Ford and GM and the big OEMs? Or kind of what are you targeting there?
Great question. So I'm actually going to pull up my course listing and kind of just like make sure I don't misquote myself on the actual content in there. But the idea is that it's I'm trying to make a class that's valuable for everyone. So not only the engineers and the hackers who are going to do a lot of the hands-on technical security work, the penetration testing, the hacking. Of course, there's a lot of valuable content for them, a lot of hands-on technical engineering exercises, but there's a lot of content that's also relevant for the manager or the, executive class as well, right? So it kind of
Okay.
takes a walk through the overall automotive cybersecurity industry, explaining the history of the industry, how we got here, what we're doing, and then going into a couple of really in-depth case studies on past exploits that have been published targeting automotive systems. And
Nice.
then from there, yeah, and then from there we go into just a tiny bit of like the regulations and stuff that are surrounding automotive cybersecurity, and not only for cars, but there's a lot of regulations that are kind of mimicking the automotive security legislative structure that's being applied to other smart products like IoT devices, so on and so forth. And so take a bit to talk about that, talk about things like threat analysis and risk assessment. If you've heard of Tara, then we have, I will be giving a very small hands on Tara portion before we jump into the actual engineering and technical hands on stuff. And you asked me about like what I bring for the students. Um, I think I'm expecting about 20 students this year. I do not want to bring 20 full size ECUs to my class. That would be a true pain. But I use what these like vehicle simulator boards.
Okay.
So this is a very lightweight kind of credit card size PCB. It's an open source design. It was designed and published by Toyota. You can find the GitHub repository online. It's completely free to download. You can have them manufactured yourself, or if you want to buy one from me, come find me at DEF CON and I'll give you a special DEF CON discount. But I use these. I basically give each one of the students one of these. This is a simulator for a full vehicle, networking environment. It has a full CAN FD implementation running on these four ECUs, and it's all on real hardware. It's not virtualized at all. So you can actually do things like demonstrate denial of service attacks with a paperclip. Like part of my class, I'll actually say, okay, now kids, take your board, take this paperclip, touch these two pins, and boom, what happened to your CAN communication? It's gone because you shorted the circuit and the termination is not there anymore. So da 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 da. Right. So a lot of fun things you can do with these boards. They've got a full diagnostic stack as well. So we teach things like automotive diagnostics, how to use ISO TP to send longer messages over the CAN bus.
Mhm. Yep.
We have a couple of demos and hands-on exercises for EV security. So if you've ever wondered how, what the attack surface of an electric vehicle charger looks like, we've got some content around there. It's only 2 days, so the amount of content I can fit is kind of compressed
Right.
because car hacking and automotive security are such, broad fields of research, right? Like each one of those things I
Right.
mentioned can be its own course in and of itself, right? Like if you wanted to look at just CAN and other in-vehicle networks and modern
Mhm.
in-vehicle diagnostics and, diagnostics over IP, right? It's a completely different field. Each one of these could take, probably several days to really go into. The EV chargers as well, the infotainment systems, like the car navigation systems. And it's kind of a masterclass in the sense that it's a great introduction to a lot of different aspects of the field, both technical and theoretical. And yeah, it's kind of a stepping stone for anybody who wants to really take any of those disciplines or fields of study or subjects and dive even deeper from there.
Nice, nice. So with that little, board that you have, like, how deep do you go in the class? Like, are you gonna do you teach them how to pop calc on an ECU, for example? Like, are you actually, going, like, that deep into exploitation? Or is it more like, this is what CAN is, this is how you can kinda abuse the protocol a little bit, but you don't really get into the firmware side?
So a lot of the hands-on exercises are very much based on like the vehicle specific parts of automotive cybersecurity. Because if I want to
Right.
teach like an exploit development course, first of all, I'm not the best guy to teach that. I'm, a so-so exploit developer. But from the perspective of what are the unique aspects of the automotive cybersecurity, field about penetration testing a vehicle, that's where a lot of the technical content kind of lives. So
Okay.
yeah, hands-on CAN bus exercises, hands-on diagnostic exercises, and then some hands-on electric vehicle, OCPP exercises as well. I don't have any full chain exploit hands-on activities, but I will do some demos of running some exploits on an in-vehicle navigation system. So the IVI system you find in some cars, I have an exploit that I can demonstrate. We'll do like a full walkthrough of why that vulnerability exists, what's the problem, what kind of impact can it have, so on and so forth. So unfortunately, the IVI section of the class is a little bit short, just because there's too much other stuff that I wanted to
Right.
include this year. But it'll be a full, exploit walkthrough from start to finish. It's a really funny one. It's delivered over USB, So you can actually plug in a USB drive with the payload and get some. You literally just get like root by tapping a couple of buttons on the screen. It's kind of hilarious.
Nice, nice. Now, so is that like a true like, there was a bug in the system, or is this like almost like one of the diagnostics, like firmware update over USB that you're just abusing, a pathway or an attack vector that the OEMs just kinda handed you?
That's a great question. So that particular vulnerability is the vulnerability itself is actually an improper input validation
Okay.
vulnerability in one of the functions that the user can interact with through the touchscreen. So there's a certain field
Mm,
on this device that does not properly validate inputs and as such is vulnerable to code injection. Okay. So it
okay.
just so happens that the place where you can write, whatever you want, you can write like, you know, dollar sign, parentheses, SH, space. You just literally with your finger, you just type in whatever code you want it to run.
Mm.
And when you run another certain function on the IVI system, it will actually pass that string that you entered as an argument to some other function that's being run as root. And so, and so what the you know, USB drive is only being used to provide like the rest of the payload. So I'm literally just writing a script on here, putting it in, and then I tell the IVI through that, you know, command injection vulnerability, hey, run the script that's on the USB drive.
Yep.
And then it'll run whatever else I want it to run. So create a new user, set them as root, no password, enable login, connect to my Wi-Fi, display whatever image you want on the screen, right? There's a lot of, from there,
Mhm.
Bob's your uncle, right? You've got full control
Right.
over the device here. You've got a root user, you can do whatever you want. So
That's, that was very nice of them to make that very helpful.
yeah, so this was the actual device that this is working on is not like an OEM original device. It's an aftermarket automotive IVI. So it's kind of an
Okay.
important distinction between aftermarket devices and the devices that come kind of baked in to the car when you buy it. And that's one of the things
Mhm.
that I kind of highlight as part of this demo. But that device was one of the targets of the Pwn to Own automotive competition from about 2 years ago. Are you familiar
Okay.
with the Pwn to Own?
Yeah, that's the one, they do that in Vancouver, right?
They do it in a few places, actually. So I think they have a couple different competitions around the world every year. The automotive specific one is actually held here in Tokyo.
Oh, okay. I remember so the reason I remember Vancouver is I remember the first year that Tesla put a car into Pwn to Own, and I went to that one. So I was actually in Vancouver for that, and that one was, interesting. The Tesla team, their cyber team, likes to party pretty hard. They're good guys.
Yeah, definitely. Tesla is one of the more, how should I say, forward thinking
Mhm,
manufacturers when it comes to cybersecurity. They're kind of I guess, the most well known of like the new generation of cars, right? Since a couple, I think, 10 or so years ago, all these electric vehicle companies are now starting to break into the market. Whereas like the old guard, the traditional automotive cybersecurity industry,
mhm.
they're kind of in their own category. And the new generation is a little bit more accepting of cybersecurity as a concept, in my experience. And so Tesla really led the charge on that. Like you said, sponsoring the Pwn to Own competition. At the Pwn to Own automotive specific competition, now they focus, bringing a vehicle and their chargers as well and having them exposed to hackers. And they will actually support hackers and researchers who have submitted, excuse me, valid findings on their vehicle platform. They'll actually help you get root on your car so that you can then look for more vulnerabilities later. It's kind of incredible.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's I remember, when a lot of that started, and a lot of the thoughts around and I wanna get your thoughts on this too, because you mentioned, like, Tesla is kind of one of those forward leaders in the area. Is that because they were able to develop their entire vehicle, like, kind of from the ground up, and they weren't held back by this legacy tech debt and, ECUs that you gotta sell for 10 years in order to kinda recoup some of the ROI on it? Is it was like were they kinda in a great spot because they built it from the ground up instead of leveraging that traditional vehicle supply chain?
I would say that's definitely a big part of it, for sure. Not being bogged down by a very large, heavy, like hierarchical supply chain where you have middlemen and gatekeepers at every level,
Yeah.
um, makes it a lot easier to implement, thorough cybersecurity management as part of your development process, but then also for your
Mhm.
operations as well. If you do find vulnerabilities, well, I don't have to send a certified letter to my supplier requesting that they, in their grace, supply me with whatever information I need to maybe find out what the bug was because they won't give me the source code. They'll only deliver a compiled binary when I pay them for their work. And it's, just a lot of friction that gets
Yep.
introduced when you have that kind of division of responsibilities through so many companies, and it's unavoidable, right? There are reasons that they do it
Right.
that way. It's part of how the traditional automotive industry is able to operate at such a huge scale is that huge supply chain and different suppliers of different components and systems. But for sure, it's a great trade-off for Tesla. They have the flexibility to
Mhm.
really take full control over their cybersecurity practices. They have the forward thinking insight to support programs like Pwn to Own, so on and so forth. And I think it's paid dividends for them in the long term. There are a lot of talks about Teslas being hacked, but what a lot of people don't realize is those talks get published, maybe a year or two after the hack actually happened. And
Mhm.
what's the important part is that, well, those are all bugs that have been fixed, right?
Right.
So
And
and
and pushed
it-
out to the entire fleet over the air. Like, you didn't have to take your Tesla to a dealership and have them, run code and then charge you $500 to update this, firmware in an ECU. Like, they just push it right over the telematics link.
you're exactly right.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's awesome. So you've got your hands in a lot of different things. So let's talk about the car hacking village. Like, when did you start going to DEF CON? Like, when was your first DEF CON?
Man. So I first went to DEF CON in 2017. I was actually still a
Okay.
university student. And I was doing an internship with a company that was very early in the automotive cybersecurity space. So I actually never really wanted to study cyber. I didn't study cybersecurity in school. I kind of landed in cybersecurity on accident by getting exposed to the concept of car hacking and automotive cybersecurity. I had
Hmm.
never thought about it as a career before, but someone introduced the idea of hacking a car to me back in like 2017, a long time ago. And I was like, what? And it just kind of like captured my mind and took me hostage. And I got a job at the company of, the friend of mine who introduced me. I got an internship there. And so I went to DEF CON for the first time in 2017 as a volunteer and because our company was sponsoring the village. So if you've
Okay.
ever been to the village, that might sound familiar, but basically companies that sponsor the village would pay a certain amount of money. The village itself is a nonprofit organization. So my company was sponsoring. We had a couple of our products and solutions that we were developing. We brought them to the village and we were kind of explaining what we're building, for the purpose of cybersecurity in the automotive industry. And that's kind of when I met a lot of the other DEF CON community people and car hacking village veterans and just got along with them little by little. And year after year, I kept going because I really liked it. It was a lot of fun, learned a lot, did some CTF problems and kind of
Nice.
got to learn about the car hacking and stuff. I mainly played in the car hacking CTF for the first 3 or so years of attending DEF CON. And then at some point, I just kind of ended up volunteering for the village instead. So I made CTF challenges instead of competing in them. So I liked making Bluetooth challenges. So I really like reading about Bluetooth security and Bluetooth exploits. It's a very niche kind of subsection of automotive and other wireless network security. It's a very fun environment. Sorry to go off on a tangent, but that's what I was doing. I was making I was volunteering to make challenges for the CTF that had a more wireless aspect because a lot of our challenges were canvas based or, physically like touching, ECUs. I wanted to add some more wireless content in there. So I developed a couple of CTF challenges you could run on a Raspberry Pi server over Bluetooth. Some really fun, simple stuff, little puzzles, learn how to like send frames to a vulnerable like service running on a exposed Bluetooth port with no authentication, and it was a lot of fun. And eventually, the people who organize the car hacking village, there's an actual board of directors. They asked me like, "Hey, do you want to join the board?" you've been around for a long time. You're a decent enough person. Like, you want to be part of the
We
team?
we
I said, yeah, I'd love
we know
to.
who
And
you
so
are.
yeah, because I had been friends with these guys for a long time at this point, and we didn't only do DEF CON. DEF CON is kind of where the village started and still our main event every year. But over time, we had started to go to some other countries, other events around the world. And so I got to know these guys, hanging out, me and Justin, and he's the current president of the village, and other, veterans of the village, Robert, so on and so forth. There's a whole like page of the people who run the thing online. You can, excuse me, check it out on our website. But eventually, I ended up joining the village as the kind of director of outreach. I was already living in Japan at this point, and I was just, how should I put this? I just had friends in a lot of places, like around the world, randomly different places. And I would tell them, like, hey, we do car hacking village at DEF CON. Do you want to do car hacking village at your event in Brazil? And they'd be like, sure. And so, we ended up going to Brazil a few times. And I was in Romania last year. I went
Hmm,
to Finland this year as well. That was great. And you're just bringing car hacking village and taking it from place to place. And eventually, we kind of reworded my position to vice president of international operations, and that's kind of what I do now. Is I take care of a lot of the car hacking village events that take place outside of the United States. Usually, being organized by me. Not always that I'm the one running it, but that I'll meet someone who wants to do an event, or they'll reach out to me. We'll set up an opportunity to run the village at their event, and we'll find the right volunteers based on their geographic location or what kind of content they want. The logistics can be a little bit miserable because
yeah.
I have, you can see here, I have a closet full of hardware and stuff, right? But like not everyone has a closet full of car hacking village gear and goodies, and so we've been trying to expand like the number of volunteers who can actually run or lead a village so that,
Mhm.
like, don't get me wrong, I love going new places, but it's very far to get from like Tokyo to Brazil, for example. It's the exact other side of the
Yeah.
world. So if I can help it, you know, I would like it I would like it to be run mainly by like a Brazilian car hacking village community. And then maybe I'll show up as a guest, but I want them to be able to own that village. I want them to be able to have their own local community and get, run their own organizations, etc. And so we're
Right.
trying to inspire more smaller, like local, village affiliated groups around the world. And, we can all fly under the same car hacking village flag. We are a little bit, we're not picky about who we'll let run a village. We just have a couple of like, rules, like it's a volunteer activity, right? Like just keep that in mind and make sure you're not abusing it to, promote your own brand or something. Like we have sponsors, of course, and we value our sponsors very much. We're thankful for all their support. But we always try and make sure that the focus of our village is on hands-on, accessible
Mhm.
learning. So if you're a sponsor of the village and you want to bring a demo of your product, well, it had better be interactive. Like I better be able to learn something, or there's some free version of whatever you're bringing that I can use later when I go home. I don't just want you to run a slideshow about how smart you are or how much money you're saving all your clients by introducing this new SaaS tool or something. And not that
Right.
that's a bad thing to do. It's just this is not the place for it, kind of thing. So
Right. No, that totally makes sense. What kind of sponsors are you looking for? Like, are you looking for people who are making, hacking tools or forensic tools? Are you looking for OEMs? Like, what's kind of that sponsor profile?
great question. I'm going to open up our website and read off some of our sponsors from this year for you. Just to give you an idea. So we've got Toyota Tsusho Systems. They're one of the suppliers of like the greater Toyota, I guess, ecosystem. We've
Okay.
got Rivian, the EV, developing the EV manufacturer. Rivian has been a sponsor for a very long time. They're really great guys. We got Aptiv, that's another supplier from the industry.
Yep.
So these are kind of, on the manufacturer or supplier side. They're the actual industry that makes the vehicles and those components. They're very, we're very grateful for their sponsorship because it shows that these are companies that are taking cybersecurity seriously. These are
Mhm.
companies that are putting their money where their mouth is. They're not just, talking about it. They're actually, committing their resources to support us to help more people learn about cybersecurity in vehicles, as opposed to hiding from the concept and hoping that nobody learns enough about their vehicles to
Yeah.
hack them. Like
S
Rivian is really like an exemplary sponsor. If I'm just going to give them like an unprompted like shout out. The last few years, they've come to the village. They bring a CTF that's actually a custom firmware image built on the actual hardware that they put in their vehicles. Like they'll bring
Okay.
an actual Rivian ECU running like a, intentionally vulnerable like, CTF firmware, and they'll use that to deliver a CTF, a unique CTF for our audience, for our attendees. And it's amazing. It's beautiful. And it's like, wow, that's as close as you can get to hacking like a real vehicle system in like a safe, controlled environment, because it is a
Right.
real vehicle system. It's just, running a firmware designed for educational purposes, for CTF, for fun. And then we have other sponsors that are like innovators in the automotive security industry, or companies that have been doing automotive penetration testing, like ETAS, NDIAS is a Japanese one, Red Balloon Security. These are companies who either specialize in consulting services and pen testing, or they're developing tools for automotive cybersecurity management
Mhm.
or for actual car hacking. There's a really wide range of companies that we have at the village as sponsors every year, and we're very grateful for all their support. And we really couldn't do it without them.
Yeah, I love it, and I love seeing it because, I mean, ultimately, just like you said, you were never even thinking about doing this until you were exposed to it by a friend, and so I think that's one of the great things about the villages and other events, kinda like Hackasat, that got pretty popular there for 4 or 5 years and things. It gets people thinking about things differently and exposing it to people who would have otherwise never had really considered it or even knew about it, and it just kinda grows that talent base in a very, very critical area. I mean, there's not a lot of people out there that can really say that they hack cars or they're in, automotive cybersecurity. And so, we obviously need it. We've kind of established that the industry is very vulnerable, everything from passenger light duty vehicles all the way up through, heavy duty class 8 vehicles and combines and bulldozers. So it's the more people that we get into the field, the better. So I love the car hacking village for that reason, that it just gets more talent kinda into that arena, because I mean, there's just a huge shortfall.
I definitely agree. I think that the concept of a village is very beautiful, if you ask me. And we're not the only village, of course. There are a lot of villages. You can find them at DEF CON, at other events as well. But I think DEF CON is kind of where the concept started. Originally with, I think, the lockpicking village was the very
Mhm.
first village, long time ago, way before I was involved in any of this. I believe the lore is that the lockpicking village was first, but eventually the other villages started, popping up. And there are a lot of amazing villages like Maritime Village, Biohacking Village, ICS Village. I'm friends with the organizers of all of these. I'm very happy to give them a shout out. They do great work. They deserve all the love and good press they can get. And like the concept of a village is really just about like removing gatekeeping. Not in like a not to say that there are people gatekeeping this in a malicious sense. It's just that a lot of these things, like car hacking, for example, have a huge barrier to entry. Most people
Mhm.
won't have a spare car they can learn to hack on,
Right. It's a
right?
very
And so
expensive asset, like, if you mess it up, it's kinda critical.
yeah, like, you need that to get to work, you
Yep.
brick your dad's car, see how mad he gets, right? Like, it's it's not the kind of thing where, as opposed to, like, traditional cybersecurity, if I wanted to learn traditional cybersecurity, I can go on Hack the Box. I can go on Try Hack Me. There's so many amazing platforms for learning cybersecurity, learning these hacking techniques, these hands-on hacking techniques in a safe environment. We have virtual machines. We have Docker. God bless Docker. I love Docker. Docker's great, right? You can just spin up a whole cyber range either on your computer if you have a strong enough computer to run multiple VMs, or you can run it in the cloud if you don't. And you just have to pay a little bit for those resources, but it's like, okay, maybe $50 a month for a whole access to as many machines as you want to practice on. It's not that easy to do with cars, even if you did have like, let's say like the monetary aspect of like, okay, I can afford to buy some, automotive components or even a whole new car to like work on it. Where are you going to put it?
Right.
It doesn't fit on a hard drive. Y- Look, the closet. You see all this stuff I've got in here. Like, it's just there's a lot of barrier to entry for people who might want
Yeah.
to learn about these things. And giving people an opportunity to learn hands-on what these network protocols that vehicles use are like, what kind of, attack surfaces exist. The wireless stuff, for example, is really fun, but you wouldn't know how to get started unless you had like a lab environment someone helped you set up, right? It's a lot of removing that barrier to entry for people so they can just experience it and get the motivation and learn enough to get started on their own. We can't, take anyone from like zero to hero in a weekend, but what the least we can do is inspire you and inspire your curiosity to hopefully look more into it and build your own home lab and set up your own test benches and buy all your own equipment. It's an expensive hobby, but it's fun and it's valuable, and we need more people doing this stuff because we got AI in cars now. We got, oh, buddy, we got all
Yeah.
sorts of stuff, right? So,
Self-driving vehicles, AI, and running in cars, AI running in everything. Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like you're talking about the buried entry. I actually got a couple of semi trucks sitting, here at the office around the corner that we work on. So yeah, there is definitely a cost, a barrier to entry, for that. So would you say that let's talk about like actual like automotive security. Are cars vulnerable? Can they be hacked?
I mean, yeah, I think that the axiom of there's no such thing as a completely perfect system is very, very important here when it comes to car security. This was, I think, one of the big culture gaps that existed in like the automotive industry when cybersecurity was first being introduced to the landscape. I remember when I was about 7 or 8 years younger, and we were, working for this startup doing automotive cybersecurity. We would get meetings with these executives from these like large companies here in Japan, for example, and we would explain to them like, as you add connectivity and intelligent systems and networking to these vehicles, and they're communicating with the outside world, all that software has bugs, and that introduces the risk of your vehicles being hacked. And, back then, the narrative was like, okay, how much does it cost for you to fix it? Like, how can you, like, what do I have to pay you so that this just goes away and is never a problem ever again? I'm like, "Well, dude, that's not how it works." And it
Right.
sounds like I'm trying to sell you a subscription service. Because it's like, oh no, well, the thing is that new bugs get discovered all the time. You need to be like on top of your patching. And they're like, why? Can't you just fix it? I'm like, no, no, I can't. So this kind of culture shift is eventually, I think the people in charge of security at these OEMs now, they understand that. I think that they appreciate that security is not just a we did it and it's over kind of thing. It's there's a whole figure eight loop of my own personal product cybersecurity management model. It's a literal figure eight. Like it's a combination of your activities during development and testing, but then your operations and your monitoring and your response and your ability to intake vulnerability information, triage it, confirm if it's true or not, and then respond either to repair or to do something else, right? There's all sorts of different, risk response options available. And how does that work with your supply chain? Who do you know who you have to talk to, et cetera? There's a lot that goes into that. The modern car is definitely more secure than cars of, say, 10 years ago.
Oh yeah.
I'm personally of the opinion that, if the GPAC, right, the ground zero for this whole industry, right, I'm confident that nothing like that will ever happen again. I personally think that nothing like that will ever happen again. This is an optimistic take. I say this from the perspective of someone who's read it in detail and like the full technical write up, and I teach people about this. There was so much wrong. There's so many things that were wrong in like the perfect ways that they all worked together to make this event possible. Remote, route access to a vehicle and being able to stop the engine from anywhere in the United States. This is like a perfect storm of things that should not be true, right? And the baseline of the industry, I think, has risen to a point where I would be very surprised if anything like that ever happened again to the same scale, right? Now,
But the,
you know, I'm sure
I don't know.
some, yeah,
I feel differently because we've done it. in other cases, and other times, and we've proven different, attack vectors work. There's some public work out there that a lot of it's private, but, I mean, even Sam Curry, which hopefully we're gonna have him on the podcast, and he's another fellow Nebraskan. He's here in Omaha as well, so he actually might be sitting across from me one of these days. But he had some really interesting hacks using, like, the API layers, with dealerships and stuff, where you get a license plate number, you can unlock doors and start cars. I just crazy, crazy stuff.
Yeah, Sam's done a lot of really amazing work. I met him, I think, a couple of times. He comes to Tokyo every once in a while, so I see him when he's here. Yeah, it could happen. I would be surprised, but like I'm sure I'm being a little bit optimistic here, but I think it could very well happen. Like you said, there's been a lot of research about like the way that mobile apps and other long range interfaces for the car that
Right.
utilize a whole cellular or infrastructure backbone are being exploited. And I've seen multiple instances of like these vehicle like mobile app APIs being abused to give anyone access to like the inside of a vehicle and stuff. Um, I'm really hoping that none of those end up in like the safety critical, powertrain
Yeah.
control section of a vehicle. That's kind of what I'm thinking of when I say I don't think it'll ever happen again. I hope that the segregation of those systems has gotten to a point where that's not expected yet. But definitely some large scale attacks are probably still possible and will remain a real, risk, into the future, of course.
Yeah, there's some interesting, like, when you get on the heavy duty vehicle side, like, it gets even scarier, right? Like, you got these massive semi trucks, 80,000, pounds driving down the highway. And, there's even research out of like NMFTA where, guy by the name of, Ben Garnier, he's a Canadian, automotive cybersecurity researcher. He works with NMFTA, quite a bit. He was just using a small software defined radio, just a couple $100, and he was able to like get to, on trailers, was able to affect brake pressure. And so you can imagine, I mean, because everything's run by air and pneumatics on trailer brakes and stuff. And so that was a pretty interesting attack vector where he was actually able to induce diagnostic signals on unshielded wires on the trailer network. And so, I mean, it gets a little scarier in the sense of, what could happen to some of these safety critical systems when there's just, again, I mean, bugs happen, right? Like, you're human, like, you don't design it right. I mean, you put it, there's flaws in software. It happens. We're humans, and now that AI is writing most of our code, AI is trained on all human knowledge that was flawed. So now it could be potentially writing flawed code. So yeah, it's really, really interesting, in that respects. Um, so kind of back to the DEF CON play and everything coming up. So what would people expect to see at a village? Like, if they show up at DEF CON in a couple weeks, what would they expect to see? Is there like a regimented structure and things happening, or is it mostly just people hanging out, chatting, and hacking?
Great question. It's honestly a mix of both. So there are a couple of things that are consistent at our village every year at DEF CON. We have talks, presentations given by
Mhm.
experts. We have a CTF competition. We have the best car hacking competition in the world every year. So we have excuse me, competitive teams come and try and solve challenges made by our car hacking village team of volunteers. And then excuse me, we also have a badge, right? So we will develop a car hacking village badge every year, and we will be selling them at DEF CON. You can come and get one for the low, low price of, I think, I actually don't remember the price, so I don't want to misquote I don't, I don't want to misquote the price at this point. Um, but the idea is that the badge is not only cool and sparkly and shiny with a lot of blinky LEDs, it's also part of our CTF. It has CTF problems built into it. And it's also a fully fledged car hacking tool. Like we have a full CAN interface on it, pre-installed attacks, different diagnostics, scanning, enumeration services, a lot of cool things we include in the badge. We make a new one every year. And there's going to be some sponsors talking about what they work on. They'll have some hands-on exhibits, displays people can work with, just try things out, do some learning, right? Kind of at your own pace on site at the village. We have those scheduled talks. We have they're part of the DEF CON creator stages program. So they actually have a full stage set up and, cameras and mics and everything. And then we have the CTF. So if you're a CTF player, you can make a team with some new friends, or you can bring your friends from your hometown, or get together in Vegas and run a whole CTF team for the Car Hacking Village CTF. And if you want to be more hands-on, you want to bring your laptop and all your tools, you'll be able to do that. Lot of fun stuff, a little bit for everything. Couple of giveaways. We'll have some just little activities going on here and there. But yeah, that's kind of the rundown of what you can expect at the Car Hacking Village.
Nice. How long does the CTF run? Because I know when we used to compete in the actual, like, the full DEF CON CTF, it would go for 2 days.
Yeah, yeah.
So how long is this, like, a multi-day thing, or do you kinda compress it to 1 day?
No, it's definitely a multi-day thing. We run it for most of the duration of DEF CON. I think that we will usually close the CTF a little bit early on Sunday. So on the third day, I think we close it at noon, and then we just get things packed up. Because if we're designated as a black badge competition, we need to, if you're familiar with the DEF CON black badge
Yep.
concept,
Mhm.
we need to coordinate with DEF CON, and for their closing ceremonies, we have to get, the winners up on stage and give them the black badge. And so we always stop a bit early before the actual conference is over, just so we can coordinate all of that stuff. But yeah, it's a 2.5 day competition. I remember when I still competed, when you're working on a CTF, like, you're totally zoomed in. The rest
Yeah.
of the world just kind of disappears, and you're like
Mhm.
Googling stuff, looking through PDFs of documentation in the middle of the night. It's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. So from an automotive, cybersecurity, so you're in the industry. What are you doing now? And I mean, feel free not to, like, give away any secrets or anything, but do you have any, like, cool projects you're working on right now?
Yeah, I actually do. I'm working on a lot of fun research around wireless systems in vehicles. So I think I mentioned before, like, Bluetooth is one of my areas
Yep.
of interest, like, just my
Mhm.
particular interest. But I've also started looking more at the other wireless networks that vehicles use. So not only the cellular stuff, but also TPMS systems, and other RF systems, mainly for like vehicle, like fingerprinting, and being able to, how should I say? And this it's not only for wireless systems, but there's some really cool research that one of my old professors published about examining electrical signals, and
Mhm.
based on like the minute differences in the way that they actually signal on the wire, you can kind of identify a specific ECU, not just by like what CAN frames it sends, etc., but literally by the physical characteristics of its transmission. And thinking about applying that to wireless transmissions as well, something interesting I've been kind of looking into. Additionally, electric vehicle security and like EV charger security has been really interesting lately. I'm working with some friends on developing kind of the equivalent of this thing, but for an electric vehicle charger. It's an actual EV charger,
Oh,
that
nice.
you can, like a small mini EV charger that you can give someone for a class. Something that I'm hoping will be available soon. I would love to have used it for my class in Vegas this summer. Unfortunately, I've got to stick with some simulated environments for that. But yeah, a lot of the development of educational material for car hacking and automotive cybersecurity. Right. And then that's really kind of where my passion in this lies. And so I've been spending a lot more time on that recently, and trying to make it more accessible to people, give more people opportunities to learn about car hacking, so on and so forth.
Nice. Now on the EV charger thing, I think a lot of people think it's like plugging a car into a wall. Like, it's just power, but that's not true, is it?
No, not at all.
A little bit of a leading question there.
No, no, of course. So, man, the EV charger ecosystem is really interesting. There's a lot of moving parts that I would say are pretty invisible to the consumer. And
Mhm.
I'm of the opinion that that's like the sign of a well-developed system. Like, your users shouldn't
Right.
know all of the messy stuff that's happening in the background, but when you look deeper into it, there are a lot of different technologies in use in these EV chargers. To give you one example, right? The plug, the actual connector that you plug into your car, there are many different types of plug, right? There are a lot of different standards across the world. There's differences between AC chargers and DC
Mhm.
chargers, right? AC charger will be something that you have in your home. That's going to be the one that converts AC from your house's mains voltage into DC to actually provide to your car because cars, store their battery as DC. But then you have like the superchargers, those big industrial sized chargers, like the gas station sized chargers. They're DC chargers. They can output like maybe 10 times as much power as like the home ones. The Each of these different standards, from different parts of the world, they have different communication methods embedded into the plug to communicate with the vehicle, right? So
Mhm.
there's kind of multiple angles of the EV charger security, attack surface. There's the vehicle to the charger and the charger back to the vehicle. I believe Tesla delivers vehicles updates through their charger network sometimes. Like they can actually do
Oh,
that. They can update your vehicle over the charging port, which is wild, right? But there's also the kind of authentication and user management on the EV charger. That's going to be like, how do I pay for my charging? How do I, if I have like a subscription, how is that subscription managed and tracked? Right. And those communications have to be sent to a backend somewhere. We call it the charging uh, it's CSMS, but it's not cybersecurity management system. There's a different CSMS. It's like they're both called CSMS, like charge station management system, right? It's like the
okay.
back end that communicates with the charger to authenticate, like, yeah, this person has a valid subscription. You can allow them to charge up till this amount, and like we'll bill them later. And that's an entirely different protocol. And then the vehicle charger itself, the charge station communicates with that CSMS again with a protocol called OCPP, right? This is the open charge point protocol. It's an open source specification for communicating between the backend, the CSMS, and the charge point, right? And there's communications going from there. There's multiple versions of this specification. 1.6 is kind of the most commonly used one right now, but it's very insecure. There's a more modern, 2.0 one that you should use. And there's so much involved in these EV chargers, and like it's a very interesting place to dive into. But like I said, with like the car hacking stuff, there's a huge barrier to entry. I have a few EV chargers in this house, but like, you need to be very careful when you work with these systems. You don't want to touch anything like that's like super high voltage. There's special
Right.
safety training you need to get to work with like high voltage systems. And, to get the opportunity to work on those is really, a privilege sometimes. I've had a few opportunities to do that, and I'm trying to do more of that recently.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot more to the chargers than people realize. There's a lot of communication going back and forth between the two. So the big question is are there any known or public hacks where they've delivered exploits from a charger to a car or vice versa?
Good question. I believe that there now I'm not remembering exactly what happened, but I do believe that and the details to this one might not be public yet. I believe that at one of the recent Pwn to Own automotive competitions, some a team called Synactive, they're very, very good. They kind of specialize in Tesla hacking. I think some of the best in the industry. I love those guys. They're great. Shout out to Team Synactive. They, I believe they hacked the Tesla wall charger through the charge port. So they kind of simulated a
Okay.
vehicle and sent some, packets to actually hack the wall charging port through that charge connector. There was another paper that was just published recently that I remember I saw and I wanted to read. Unfortunately, this is a really silly reason for slacking, but and I believe it was like the same attack vectors, attacking the vehicle charger through the port. The website that the research was published on doesn't load properly on mobile. And so I'm usually reading on my phone. So I haven't actually had our chance to read it, but there is a really good article that I've been like waiting to read about exactly this. Is someone hacking the charger through the port that connects to the
Mhm.
vehicle, right? I have to get to that one. Thank you for reminding me that I need to read that later. Um, but yeah, there are other publicly known attacks that will work on, DC chargers that are completely like wireless, no hands on. You don't need to touch it at all. Have you ever heard of something called a broken wire attack?
A broken wire attack. No.
So it sounds like black magic. It's crazy. But you were actually touching on this, and you reminded me of this when you were talking about the research that Ben Gardner did when he was kind of injecting signals on unshielded wires, right, through radio
Mhm.
transmission with an SDR. So broken wire, if you look it up, it's there's a whole white paper and free POC code online. It's it's an attack by which you can use a software defined radio to actually induce signal on a charging cable connecting
Mm.
a DC vehicle charger to an electric vehicle. And you can actually inject a preamble message that will cause the it's like it's a certain signal that's part of the specification of this like power line
Mhm.
communication that they use to communicate. That signals like the start of a communication. That's why it's called a preamble. You can actually radiate that from an SDR. And because the cable of the car charger acts like a big antenna,
Mhm.
it will absorb the radiation and it'll actually propagate through the system. And the devices reading it will register that as a valid preamble message. And so they'll actually stop the charging session if you repeat that often enough, and it won't resume unless you unplug it and plug it back in.
Interesting.
So these
Okay.
researchers, they demonstrated that they could, and it only takes like 5 seconds. You could do like a drive by where you're driving by like a Tesla supercharger, or I actually don't remember if it works on Teslas or not. Don't quote me on that one. I don't remember if that was a specific test target that they use it against. But these researchers based out of Europe, I think some of them in Switzerland, some of them in the UK at Oxford University, good friends of mine actually, they published this research showing that, hey, we drove by these charging stations, these public charging stations where people come to charge their cars, kind of like a gas station, and we validated with the proper permissions, et cetera, from the authorities that if we just send that you know attack, it will actually stop all these chargers from charging. And you think, okay,
Interesting.
well, so what? You stop them from charging. It's not a big deal, whatever. If you take that in the context of how a lot of countries and cities are trying to prioritize their green transportation. Right? You go to a city like I think city of Ann Arbor, where I grew up, they have like a policy. All of our city buses are electric now. That's
Okay.
awesome. However, what if, you know, all of the buses or cars in your fleet are electric and they're charging at night? Some asshole drives by and turns them all off. You're gonna have a bad day the next morning. What do you do? So, and
A
it's
lot of people are gonna have a bad day the next day when the buses don't show
yeah.
up.
As we go to societies where electrification starts to propagate throughout society for things like deliveries, God
Mhm.
forbid, ambulances, fire trucks, right? Like this
Yep.
kind of threat, yeah, oh, you just turned it off. That's not a big deal. You don't even get root. Like, that's not the point. I did the thing. I turned off your car. Like, that's the objective here, right? Man, there's a lot of potential for real risk. You could disable a whole fleet of electric vehicles and bring logistics for a whole company to a stop, cause, tons of, damages, right? There's a lot that goes
Mhm.
on in the background in the greater, I guess, the bigger picture because, cars and trucks, et cetera, are their critical infrastructure. They bring food from the farmers to us. I can buy it at the supermarket. I need trucks for that.
Yep.
So the big picture is always, and as a company called Fleet Defender, I'm sure you're very familiar with this concept.
What you
There's a
just said is
lot.
actually yeah, keep going, keep going.
No, I was just gonna say, like, there's a lot of implications to something like this, and it's a well demonstrated, reproducible attack. You need some specialized hardware, like the right SDR with the right sample rate, features, etc. But anybody can do it, and
Yep.
it's just physics. It's physics. You
Mhm.
can't turn it off.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's just it. I mean, especially when you have, hobby grade SDRs that are like the Hack RF or the Blade RF, we're talking a couple $100. Even like the RT RTL SDR, that's kind of an old one. I mean, super cheap. I think under $100. And
yeah,
there's just so much you can do with it. And I'm glad you kind of went into that because my next question was going to be like the so what. You have people, they're like, so so and so hacks my phone. Like, so what are they going to do? Get my emails? But what a lot of people don't realize is some of those really weird boutique effects that you can have, like what you were just talking about, knocking a charger offline, and now an entire fleet of electric buses doesn't charge overnight, and no one gets a ride to work the next day. I mean, that kind of cripples a city, you can have like pretty major effects. And one of the other things that's really interesting too is when it comes to hacking, trains, planes, automobiles, those types of things, you don't have to do it too many times because the outcome can be so catastrophic. Like, you don't have to hack every single semi truck on the road today, which there's millions of them. You don't have to hack every single one of them and shut them down in order to destroy America's supply chain. You just got to hit enough of them that we lose confidence in their ability to be operated safely. And at some point, like right after 9/11, what did the White House do? They shut down all air traffic for days because couldn't trust it, right? And so same thing. And all you need is to miss 3 days worth of meals, 9 meals, and society and rule of law starts to break down. And so I think maybe with society in Tokyo, you're probably going to be a lot better off than the rest of us, because you guys tend to be much uh, I don't know, nicer and more courteous to everyone else. But I think for the rest of the world, we'd be kind of screwed. And so, yeah, it's really interesting thinking through like these. That's why I love the crazy research that shows like these really weird attacks or like these really weird outcomes that people just never thought of, because that right there, that's the attacker mindset. That's what they're going after.
Like I mentioned that I knew the gentleman who actually published this research. A long time ago, I think it was in like 2022. I did like a cybersecurity, like hands-on car hacking training for the Swiss Department of Defense. So the Department of Defense in Switzerland, they have like a special cybersecurity, I guess, division where they do
Mhm.
research on different modern cyber attacks and stuff, and they invite like members of industry to join them. So, and this wasn't like private. I'm allowed to talk about this, right? But we had like a week long like cybersecurity training session. Myself and some other instructors, we taught them about car hacking, about different vehicle networks, wireless networks, etc. And the gentleman who released that broken wire paper were actually some of the attendees of that course. So
Mm.
some of them, they were from, one of them was from Oxford University. One of them was, I think, the host of the program at the Swiss DoD. And I got to know those guys. And then like a year or so later, they published this paper, and I was reading it because it was their paper. But I'm reading it, I'm like, dude, this is so weird. Like, what do you mean you wirelessly injected packets into a cable? To like
Yep.
what? Like, I'm, when it comes to like the real low layer physics stuff, I'm still kind of not that cracked. Let's put it like that. I'm still learning a lot, but like it just sounded like black magic. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean you just
Yeah.
wirelessly sent messages along a cable? And that's what they call induction. That's a thing that exists. And
Yeah.
it's like, wow, that is so weird, but sure. And they don't even need to transmit with a lot of power. It's like,
Mhm.
and I don't even remember. My memory is failing me, but that's crazy. Like, dude, this is so
Yeah,
weird.
it's
Physics is strange.
RF is black magic. It's and, like, really good RF engineers, like, they're a whole different crowd. Uh, Very interesting, but yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, just we kinda go back to this term hacker, and it's the media's given it kind of a bad name, but I don't see it that way, and it's just really curious people that are, tinkering, that just try to find ways of doing things that other people don't think about, and it's just absolutely fascinating what people can do. And, I think that's also the scary thing too, is, in modern age, we talk about cybersecurity a lot more. You see a lot of headlines in the newspapers about it. And I think we're exposing it to a lot more people. And, it's funny every time we have a conversation about, vehicle cybersecurity or we give a talk or this or that, people will go like, well, now I'm afraid to drive home. And it's like, well, I mean, that's just, it is kind of the nature of it. Good thing we've got a lot of good guys and a lot of good, smart people working the problem. And like you said, hopefully we never do get to the point where someone drives a car off a cliff. Um,
Yeah.
I might not be as optimistic as you, but hopefully, I hope you're right.
What I will say, and this is something that I bring up a lot when talking about this subject. I think that the the potential, the risk that comes with smart and autonomous vehicles for like bodily harm and personal injury and things like, these are very real, like theoretical risks, and they're taken very seriously by the industry. In the 10 or so years I've been in this space now, almost 10 years I've been in this space now, I would say that it is taken very seriously. Like the worst case scenario, someone gets unauthorized remote control of a vehicle and can use it to harm people or crash into buildings, etc. That theoretical risk does exist. But what I will say, and then like a little bit of optimism, is that most cybercrime that's like really, you know, observed in the world is not really of that kind of violent type. When it comes
Mhm.
to vehicles, most cyber criminals are not interested in hurting people randomly. If, they're more interested in finding a way to make money from, this crime. And so,
Ransomware your infotainment unit.
yeah, I'm sure it'll happen at some point. I won't be surprised to see that happen because there's a direct correlation between ransoming, 20,000 cars of this manufacturer. If 2%
Mhm.
of them pay the $300 ransomware, I made some money, right? It's worth it for the
Yep.
person, as opposed to like crashing someone's car. Like, dude, what are you doing? Like, d- the number of people who really want to do that is much lower, right?
That's
And
like
I think that
Mossad
that's.
level or like, KGB or now FSB level, like, type stuff.
Have you heard the conspiracy theory that the CIA hacked some dude's car to assassinate him?
Oh, was this the reporter that was in California? It was a
Something like
Mercedes.
that.
Yeah, this was, 2014. I think this was before the Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek, Jeep hack.
Man, I don't know. I think it's I can't say like as a joke. Like, I'm pretty sure the CIA has way more efficient ways to do stuff like that.
That's probably
But
fair.
like, why would they go out of their way to hack his car? Maybe. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But the only observed empirical evidence we have of automotive cybercrime is in like stealing cars, relay
Mhm.
attacks, replay attacks on key fob systems, can injection.
Yep.
This is a really, really great write up and some research done by Car Hacking Village, members of Car Hacking Village. We had a talk about this at DEF CON about 3 years ago,
Was this
looking
the Ken
into.
Tyndall
That's
RAV4?
right. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Ken Tyndall and Ian Tabor, good
Ian
friends.
Tabor, yep.
Yeah, they published like a full deep dive. They went on the black market. They bought the little thing that was used to hack his car. They tore it apart. They found out what they're doing, and like it's CAN bus injection. And like those attacks have, we've seen people in Japan actually. There are car thieves in Japan that use the same tools.
Hmm.
Oddly enough, like, and it's just on the news. It was like 2022. I'm living here in Japan, and just like one day on the news, I see like it's a YouTube clip of an actual news broadcast. It's like a mainstream news channel here in Japan. They're talking about can injection. They say the words can injection. I'm like, what?
Wait, what?
Yeah, like when did you learn about that? Like, what are you talking about? It was a mainstream news channel, and they're talking about like a group of thieves in like Southeast Japan, like not too far from Tokyo, who were stealing cars with the same can injection technique. And, they got busted, but like I saw the words can bus on like a real mainstream television. So it's like, wow, that's crazy. Funny story.
Legitimized career choices right there. It's like people know.
Yeah, yeah. The conversation around like what I do at work has changed very, starkly since I like kind of started this. When I first started working in automotive cybersecurity, 2017, 2018. So people ask me like, "What do you do?" I'd be like, "I do automotive cybersecurity." They're like, "What? What is that? What are you talking about?" But nowadays, people kind of get the picture. They're like, "Oh my god, self-driving car is getting hacked. I get it." And like, it's a more
Yep.
mainstream thing now. They're putting it in movies. They've got it in Fast and Furious. They've got it in. I use clips from
Mhm.
these like movies in like my training course. Actually, like I'll show people like, hey, look, the media recognizes that this is a thing. This is a thing people understand is a concept in their brains, right? And they they get the picture now. It's a real thing that awareness has really gone up, and it's great. It's awesome.
Have you seen there's a Netflix, show called Zero Day. Have you seen that?
Yes, I did see that one.
Like,
It was pretty good.
episode 1 was like after episode 1, it kinda went like, I don't know. in weird ways, but, like, just the opening scene of episode 1 where, like, everything gets hacked and cars are going and trains and planes and everything, I'm like, "There we go." Like, that's sensationalized, but, you know,
Yeah.
maybe we'll get there one day.
For
Nation
the
state
big
level
screen,
stuff.
right? You
Looks
do it
good
for the
on
big
TV.
screen. Yeah, it does look good on TV. Yeah. There's
Nice.
another Netflix show called, Designated Survivor. Have you seen that one?
Oh, I've heard of it. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard of it.
They have a car hacking scene in there. It's actually a pretty good one. I use it in
Really?
my, in my class. You know, it's exactly like the worst case scenario you imagine, right? Gentleman driving his car, some, deep state intelligence agency hacks his car, like the power steering, he's fighting with it because power steering will break your arms, man. It's really
Oh,
strong, right?
100%. Yeah,
You know,
those things are so powerful. We've done that, like, we take over the motor, it'll rip it right out of your hands, like,
yeah,
there is no amount of muscle that's gonna stop that.
yeah, drive his car off a cliff. He's like, "Oh no, ah!" It's a great example. It's like, yeah, this is what could happen technically. Sure,
Right.
yeah,
A lot of
really, really
things
good.
have to go wrong to get there.
Yeah, you're very
Well, cool.
correct. Yeah.
So as we zoom out and kinda bring this into landing, what are your final thoughts? What does the next, 10 years look like? I guess you're on the side of cars aren't gonna be driven off of cliffs, but, are we gonna get to ransomware on infotainment units? What do you think?
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, I will say, like, yeah, I did say I think I'm a bit more on the optimistic side when it comes to like low possibility of really wide scale, you know, destructive safety impact, like cars driving into walls and stuff. I'm very hopeful and optimistic that nothing like that will happen. But ransomware on vehicles, I'm sure, but even less visible hacks, right? Like maybe not ransomware. Ransomware, the whole point is that I very excuse me, I very obviously cannot use my car. But if you
Right.
ransomware my vehicle, you could just as easily install you know, you could bug my car. You hack the IVI
Uh-huh.
system. It's
Yep.
connected to the microphone in my steering wheel. If I'm vice president of some big multinational corporation, use it for corporate espionage. If I work for some government, you can listen in on my conversations, and that's been like
Yep.
demonstrated. There's some researchers who have published some actual working exploits on vehicles that will do that. They'll do exactly that. They can record your audio and send it up to a server live through the cellular backend, right? These kind of things, I think, will become a real threat. And from the automotive industry's perspective, making sure that you're running good vulnerability disclosure programs to motivate car hackers to work with you, right? Motivate them to find vulnerabilities and reward them for reporting them to you, right?
Mhm.
Bug bounty programs, I think, are going to be much more valuable for not only for cars but other cyber physical systems as well in the future, right? And that's not even just like an opinion thing. That's Cyber Resilience Act is coming for you. Like you have to have a vulnerability, disclosure program as
Right.
part, one of those compliance requirements. And so that understanding that we need to work with the hackers, find the vulnerabilities, have them fixed, and have detection, have the ability to detect if your product's been hacked and people are having all their conversations or contacts stolen, figuring out how to make sure that if it happens to you, you can detect it and how to respond, etc. So I think that
Right.
the last like couple of years since ISO 21434 and UNR 155 got released, these are the ISO standard and the UNR regulation that have really been pushing cybersecurity management setup for the automotive industry. It's been a couple of years since that's kind of been introduced, and it's time to kick the tires, right? Like you've got your CSMS set up, great. Let's see if it actually works because
Right.
as your cars get smarter, there's going to be incidents. You've got to respond. Does it actually work? Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what you do in every other industry, right? Like, you war game it, you set up, penetration tests, and you actually test it. I mean, otherwise, how do you know how good your safeguards are if you never test them?
Exactly. Exactly. So
At least in,
gotta
like, real world environments where the person testing it isn't also the person who designed it. right? Like, you gotta have that third party separation.
Exactly, exactly. And so now it's really going to be a validation of how effective those cybersecurity management systems are, right? We'll see some OEMs who have a lot of security incidents with, varying degrees of success in handling them, and some, some will do better, some will do worse, and I guess it's just time to see.
Yeah, that would definitely be interesting. Well, thank you so much for coming on Kill Chain. This was an awesome conversation, and I won't see you at DEF CON this year, but I hope to see you at some of these events in the near future. And if anybody out there is going to DEF CON, make sure you go by the Car Hacking Village and say hi. Hack some cars, have some fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Terry. Excuse me, sorry, my throat is starting to go.
Yeah.
But I've had a great time talking with you and just, chatting about automotive security stuff. Any of your
Yeah.
viewers, if you come by to Car Hacking Village, just come say hi, and we're a friendly bunch. We'll be happy to have a good time and do some car hacking.
And buy a badge. Get one of those fancy badges.
Our badge is really nice this year. It's really, really good.
I might need to get somebody to pick me up one. That'll be cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We can
All
do that.
right. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you all later on the next one.